嗨，大家好！今天我想跟大家介绍的嘉宾是一位我之前在做抖音的时候发现的一个老师，他是一个美国人，但是他在北京已经生活了7年多了。跟很多会说中文且说中文说得很好的外教相比，我觉得他还有一点特别，就是让我欣赏，就是他不断的都在学习，就是他除了学英语以外，还有学过其他语言，然后目前好像也有在继续，就是完善自己的中文。他的视频里面提到一点，就是他的朋友在学中文，在学英文的时候特别能激励他，因为他觉得一个外国人能把他的母语说的这么好，他就会更加努力的去学语言。我觉得这一点真的让我蛮佩服的，就他已经。达到这个程度了，还这么要求自己，我觉得这是值得我们每一个人去学习的。在之前关注他抖音的时候，对他还不是那么了解，因为抖音的视频也比较短，而且他部分都是搞笑的。不过他后来做抖音，做微博，做 B 站，慢慢的也会慢慢了解一下他的性格啊，他为什么在做这些啊，然后他是怎么样学语言的啊，所以我相信今天的视频、今天的采访，大家都能够学到蛮多新的知识的。所以，我在这边特别给大家录一个片头。我不知道我这个视频做的怎么样，我是不是还有一些问题没有问到？但是我觉得，反正我自己是从这个采访里面学到蛮多东西的。对，然后这个是我今天刚到的一个专门做 podcast 的一个麦克风，它是据说是 Michael Jackson 当时录他的专辑的时候用的麦克风，就非常非常好的质量，所以我就还蛮跃跃欲试的。对，会比较丑，就是这样子一个麦克风露出来会比较丑，但是声音质量真的是很 OK。Welcome to the Fluency at Your Fingertips podcast. My name is Ella, and I'm here with Chris, or 口语老炮儿马思瑞, who is a high demand English teacher in China who took the storm, who took TikTok by storm in 2018, thanks to his wit, his humor, and of course, outstanding language capabilities. He's garnered over 1 million followers across the board. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so how are you adjusting to your newfound fame?
I mean, it's fun, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
I never really wanted to be famous. Like, I just I like making videos. I like talking to people, and I love language learning. So it's cool when people send me messages and say my videos help them out and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I haven't run into any negative stuff yet. I'm not really that
That's
famous
wonderful.
though.
So you've been called a language genius. Do you like that?
No. So I mean, that's what I'm trying to kind of go against. Like, I don't like people to think oh, 是语言天才有语言天赋. Like, that kind of stuff is just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very common thing. I mean, even not just in China, like everywhere in the West, people say oh, you're good at languages, you have language talent. And what I want people to know is I'm good at it because I've been doing it for a really long time. I've studied a lot of languages, and anybody can do the same thing,
Yeah. I was reading your bio, and you said you started to notice different languages when you were 3 or 4. One of the first times you ever heard Italian was when you were actually in Honduras, right?
Yes, exactly. So,
were you even aware those are different languages?
So, I mean, I grew up speaking Spanish and English. I was born and raised in the U.S., but my mom's from Honduras, my dad's from Chile. So we spoke Spanish at home, and we would go to Honduras all the time. And we just happened to be at this hotel that had a lot of Italian people. And we're at this buffet getting dinner, and people are just talking to me in Italian. And it's similar to Spanish, right? So I'm just thinking oh, I can kind of understand, but what's going on? And then I went back and told my mom hey, I don't get what these people are saying. Their Spanish sounds really funny. And she just kind of laughed. And she was like, no, that's Italian. I was just I don't really know what that is. Okay, sure,
right.
Cool.
Right.
So I mean that was my first first time that I really heard or had an experience with another language besides English and Spanish.
Great. So how did that first impression translate into your decision later in your life to go to Italy and actually study the language?
It was kind of funny because, like, I don't know, like, kids' mentality. I thought, like, wow, that would be really cool if I could learn Italian. But I can't because I'm not Italian. And, like, it never really occurred to me, like, oh, that's something that people learn. And then, like, it kind of just left, you know. And years later, I mean, like, we started doing foreign language classes at my elementary school, middle school, all that kind of stuff. And, I mean, I took German in high school and then Italian in college. And, like, that, I loved it. Like, that was the second that I heard that there were Italian classes, I was just like, I have to take them. You know, I have to learn this language.
Wow. So you actually lived in that country and studied the language before you actually, you know, just took off and go. I noticed that you do that a lot. Like, you just get up and go and then just stay there.
No, so I mean, like, with Italy and Germany, too, it was just, I studied German for 4 years in high school. I did an exchange in my junior year. And then for Italian, I started taking it my freshman year of college. And then, you know, most kids in the U.S. will study abroad during their junior year. I did it in the summer between sophomore and junior years. I went to both Germany and Italy for about a month and a half each. And that's where, like, I guess I really was able to hone those skills and, like, actually get a lot better at the language.
Okay. But with Chinese, it's different. You didn't know anything about Chinese or the culture.
Yeah.
And then you were studying finance in college. Why did you go? Why did you stay in after seeing so little?
So it was kind of like a random decision. I had just graduated from college, and I knew I was going to take a gap year. I was going to go to Spain originally with one of my friends, and he kind of bailed at the last minute for various reasons. And I was just like, okay, well, I can already speak Spanish, you know? So I wanted to do something else. And I had a friend who graduated the year before me, and he had been sent to China for work. His boss said, hey, like, you need to learn Chinese because I can't speak Chinese. So he happened to be in Beijing, and he sent me a message and said, like, hey, I think you'd love it here. It's super fun. And I said, like, no, that sounds boring. Because, I don't know, I was so interested in European countries and languages, and I'd never really thought about China. Besides, you know, what I learned in my finance and econ classes of just, you know, it's going to become the #1 economy in the world. It's growing really fast. So, I mean, those things kind of helped push me along in making the decision and just thinking, like, oh, why not? Let's just go and see, because I was curious about that.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I got here and I was thinking very naively, I guess, like, I'll learn Chinese, you know. I'll get to a really good level. I was going to stay here for 2 months. And
were you aware that it was one of the most difficult languages in the world?
Yeah, but
but you wanted a challenge.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd studied a bunch of languages before, and I just thought it can't be that much harder. And I mean, it was. So after 2 months here, I just thought, like, oh, well, my Chinese is still pretty terrible. This place is kind of cool. It might be an interesting place to, you know, kind of further my career. So I went back to spend Christmas with my parents, and I told them, like, hey, I'm gonna go back for maybe half a year, you know, master the language in that half a year. Again, stupid. But, I mean, I got here the second time, and I just fell in love with everything. Like, the people, I started making a lot of Chinese friends and everything. You know, I really love being here.
Okay. Would you say it's a prerequisite to actually be here in China to learn Mandarin?
Definitely not. No. I have a lot of friends who have learned Chinese first abroad in university courses or just kind of on their own. And obviously it does help if you're in country with, you know, having that language environment.
Yeah.
But you can do that on your own. I mean, you can do that in your home country, but it's gonna help a lot if you're here and, like, every day, you know, you're talking to, you know, Baoan, Fuyuan, everybody, and just having the opportunity to just practice every minute of every day is obviously super helpful.
Yeah. I always think that it's not necessary to live in that environment. But then again, Chinese is a little different. There are so many nuances to the language and the culture that, you know, you may not be able to get from studying at home in the U.S. But with some of the other languages that you did, French being one of them, you didn't have to live in that environment. Did you ever live in France?
No. So, I mean, I've studied a bunch of other languages, and it's what I always tell people. I know that you don't need to be in country because I've done it. Like, actually, my French got decently good. Like, my French isn't that great, but it got okay in China. Because I was hanging out with people from France, from Belgium. Like, a lot of my classmates were from these countries, and every day, I mean, like, we would go out, and Americans and British people would speak English, and when we were in a big group, everybody would speak English. But, there were so many French and Belgian people that there was a lot of French around me, and I was kind of interested, so I would just kind of say stuff and see what happened, and they were super supportive, super friendly, so I was just able to pick up some stuff talking to them.
Actually, I talked to my friend from Brazil last night. I asked her, hey, what do you think of this guy's Portuguese? Because like she actually lived there for 20 years. And she was like, oh my God, this person has never lived in Brazil. Like, he is so talented. Because I didn't know. I wouldn't be able to tell like how good your French is or your Portuguese. So, yeah, you have such a good command of Chinese, and not just in terms of like speaking or because a lot of people have that perfect pronunciation, but what I want to focus on is like you actually you know all the idioms and all the cultural references. And I was reading a bio, you said you listen to 相声 a lot, which is the same with Steve Kaufman, who I interviewed before. Like, what's this thing with people liking 相声, and like, why were you obsessed?
So I guess about 6 months into my time in China, a lot of people started saying like, hey, your Chinese is really good. I passed the HSK 4, which is like the third highest level of the like 汉语水平考试, but it doesn't really mean much. It's a really easy test compared to, the TOEFL, the IELTS, that kind of stuff. But there weren't that many foreigners at the time that could speak Chinese even like fairly fluently. And then one day one of my teachers just told me like, hey, you sound pretty fluent, but at the same time, you sound like you're from Xinjiang. Because like my tones were really bad. And I mean, he was just kind of saying it as a joke, and I didn't like that. I kind of pride myself on having good pronunciation and that kind of stuff. So I started finding some ways to just be able to kind of work with the language a little bit more closely, and not, just going out with friends, having dinner, having drinks, because that's great. But it's not super targeted practice a lot of the time. Like, you're just talking about what you did that day. So I started listening to some music. I really like hip hop and rap. So I found
Who's your favorite pop singer or hip hop artist?
In China, or
in China.
So I mean, like, I used to listen to a lot of just like Yinsar, which is actually banned now.
Okay.
But like, I listened to like a lot of Beijing hip hop, and the first song that I learned was 在北京, but it wasn't like the 在北京 that everybody knows. It was 在北京南城版, which was like a lot more like down on like how Beijing was changing in a negative way. But it was like super Beijing accented and stuff like that. So I started with that, and then I mean, everybody knows Dashan. And I heard like he learned his Chinese from xiangsheng. I thought like, hey, that would be cool to try that out. It's a good way to, experience the culture a little bit better. So I found that Ding Guangquan, one of the really great guys, he passed away last year, but he was super good at just working with foreigners who wanted to learn xiangsheng, wanted to improve their Chinese. And unfortunately, there were a lot of scheduling conflicts because I had work and stuff on Saturdays when he taught, but I went to quite a few lessons, and like everything that he said was incredibly helpful. And then I would just go back home and listen to a lot of stuff on my own, just like Guo Gang. And then back when I guess Cao Yunjin was on the Spring Festival Gala and that kind of stuff, I listened to a lot of that. And I guess that kind of cadence, that way of speaking, just stuck.
It got to you.
Yeah.
You were impressed.
Yeah.
How do you react to people, Beijing locals who tell you actually speak better Chinese than they do? Because I'm sure you've got them a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a really nice compliment, and like Chinese people, I think, are really supportive and really complimentary when it comes to foreigners learning Chinese. I mean, you can come out with just like a ni hao, and they're just like, "Whoa, 你中文怎么这么好啊?" And it's just like, okay, 我还没说什么.
Of course.
But I mean, I guess like in certain ways, maybe my Mandarin, not Chinese, but my Mandarin is more standard than some people, like some Chinese people. But to say that my Chinese is better than anybody who is from China, like, that's clearly not true.
I mean, in some ways, it made me question what else I could have done with my Chinese. Like, I could have read more, I could have perfected, because I'm from the South, so I don't have a perfect standard Mandarin.
Yeah.
But I would say, I can't think of any other way of respecting another culture than learning the language and taking it to a somewhat fluent level. So I think people say that to you because it makes them think about, maybe I can learn English better now. And maybe, just maybe, it's not just a matter of starting out early, because you started learning at 22, right?
Yes, 22. So I mean, that's the thing, like a lot of people say, like, you have to be a kid, you have to be in country. Once you pass the critical period, a certain age, you'll never speak like a native, or you'll never sound like a native. And obviously it's way easier if you start then. But at the same time, I've gotten pretty close, I guess, and I have a lot of friends who have done the same. And it's just a matter of, never being satisfied. I mean, you don't need to sound like a native. Anybody that I've taught, like, I don't tell them, like, you have to sound like an American or you have to sound British. Like, you don't. But I like that. Like, I enjoy that challenge. So I just spent a lot of time analyzing and just, like, listening to stuff over and over on loop.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's how you have to do it. If you want to do it, you can. It just it takes a lot of time,
Yeah. Language learning takes a lot of commitment and motivation. I mean, where did you even find that time and drive to push through?
So I guess I was lucky that when I started, I was in the middle of a gap year. So I was able to pretty much spend most of my time. I mean, I went out with a lot of Europeans and Americans and stuff like that. And in the beginning, I wasn't really that focused on Chinese learning, but after some time, it was just like, well, I want to learn this language. And everybody has extra hours in the day. It's just, are you gonna learn a language, or are you gonna 刷抖音? Are you gonna 玩什么王者荣耀? That kind of stuff.
I
didn't really have those things or like those things. And I mean, well, actually, Douyin would probably be a good way to learn Chinese now, but I mean, I just went out with friends and talked to people.
Okay. I mean, most people are way less productive in their gap year, if they do have a gap year or free time in general. And you have this crazy, I wouldn't say discipline, because I think discipline implies that you're doing something hard, but like, tell me what your rationale is. Tell me how you talked yourself into, okay, this is difficult, but I'm going to do it anyways. Were you ever frustrated with Chinese?
I mean, it's the kind of thing, like, everybody just says, like, oh, Chris, you're a 学霸. Like, you just must be such a good student. Like, you're so studious.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the same time, like, even in my language classes in high school and college, which I loved, my teachers would just tell me, like, you have to do your homework. I can't give you an A if you don't do your homework. And I was just like, I don't want to do my homework. Like, I would go out and I would find people to talk to, and I would get an A on the test because I spent time talking to people. And that's what I did with Chinese too. It was just like 边学边玩边学, like just going out, talking to people. A lot of time just like hutongs, drinking with people, playing, you know, well, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I would watch TV shows. I watched a lot of 非诚勿扰,
Right.
which is not great. It's not a great show, but
It's not. But it's a good language
yeah.
material.
Yeah, it's like it's young people talking, and like that's what I always tell people. Like, yeah, you can watch TV shows, like you know, all these Friends, Modern Family, How I Met Your Mother. They're good shows, but it's better if you just go find like reality shows or talk shows where it's like supernatural. It's not scripted, and you get like a much wider range of accents and ways of talking. So I mean, I think that's what I spent a lot of time doing, just watching TV. When there wasn't much good TV, to be honest, and watching a lot of Chinese movies when, I mean, for me, in 2012, 2013, I don't think there were that many good Chinese movies. Now, I mean, 2017, 18, 19, especially, you know, like during Spring Festival, a lot of good movies come out, and throughout the year, there's a lot of good stuff. But back then, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like, I don't know, 古装, that kind of stuff, or 抗日战争, that kind of stuff, and like, I couldn't understand that. Like, that was way, way beyond me, and it's not what you should be learning anyway, you know?
So, what language do you think now? What language do you think in?
That's a question that I get a lot. It's just like, how do I think in the language? And so there is a portion of the population, it's actually about half, about 50% of people, they don't really think in words, they think in pictures.
Right.
And I happen to fall into that. So even when I was really shit at Chinese, or like really bad at any other language that I spoke, I was never really thinking that much about like, how do I translate from English into this? I would start speaking in Italian, and you know, maybe I don't know the grammar structure, and then I have to think like, oh, I've learned this, I don't remember how to say it. But there wasn't much of that like translation process happening. Like, I just didn't really do that, because also, I mean, when I was studying, if I look up words and stuff, I always go to Google Images or Baidu Images, and I look at pictures. I'm not thinking like "狗" means dog. Like, I just look at a picture of a dog, and okay, that's "狗," and just try to cut English out entirely. Like, that's I think really important.
But what about abstract words that don't have pictures?
I mean, it's just a matter of learning it, and I hesitate to say, you know, memorizing vocab, because I really don't like the concept of 死记硬背 or 背单词. I think that's really inefficient, and it's never going to help somebody to really speak the language, which is the ultimate goal for a lot of people. Obviously, if you have a test, you know, and you have your gaokao, that kind of stuff, then yeah, you probably should. But if you had started learning English via reading or watching shows back in, you know, gaoyi, maybe you wouldn't really need to be memorizing vocab. It's not like a prerequisite to language learning. Because if I had to memorize vocab, like I probably wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have learned the language, because I don't like that. I think it's incredibly boring.
I feel like it's a surefire way to, because I know a lot of people who majored in English in college. Like, I mean, Chinese people do that.
Yeah.
And as soon as they're done, as soon as they graduate, they don't want to touch English at all. They don't want to do anything with English. They actually do something else with their major. And I think the reason behind that is because they've associated, you know, rote memory and studying for tests with learning English, when in reality, learning a language is so much more than that. I mean, I'm not denying that vocabulary is not important, but there are better ways, there are easier ways to actually go through with that. You released a video that says, you know, you don't need a lot of words, you don't need a big vocabulary. And I've been seeing a lot of comments who are like, oh, but what about tests? You can't use that in tests. But I feel like it doesn't matter if it's for tests or for real life, because, you know, if you're cramming for an exam, for instance, you're going to forget pretty much everything on the next day if you don't understand them in, like, the context, if you don't understand words and how to use them. Because no tests are going to ask you, what does this word mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, I mean, like that's the thing. If you're really crunched for time and like your test is tomorrow, then, well, yeah, you probably have to go and memorize vocab like that. But, I mean, it's the same as, you know, if you have a math test or a history test. If you're studying the day before, you're kind of in trouble, you know? The good thing would be to study throughout the whole semester or whatever, and then just have to review a little bit when it comes to the test.
Right.
And I was always the guy cramming at the end, so, I mean, I get it. But if you really want to learn the language, then there are other ways to do it.
So, just reading your bio, I was just, I cannot be more impressed. I mean, it seems like at this point, language learning is a sport to you more than anything. Like, you like that challenge. What's next for you? Like, are you going to learn Arabic next, or?
So actually, I haven't really learned a language in a long time, which like, it makes me antsy sometimes. Like I love learning languages, and that's why I got into a lot of this. Like I love learning languages, and I wanted to share that with other people. But ever since I started my company, I haven't really done much with that. I mean, I studied Cantonese for about a month and a half, 4 years ago, and that's it. Like I'd love to learn Cantonese. I think that would be the next thing if I could find people from, you know, Guangdong or Hong Kong or something.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
But you've just been perfecting your Chinese. That's all. Would you say so? Like, what have you been doing in the last 4 years with your Chinese?
I started a company in late 2015. Because I mean, like I said, I wanted to help people learn English better, and I wanted to be able to handle all of the business stuff on my own in Chinese. Like obviously, my girlfriend has helped me an insane amount. My business partner's girlfriend, a lot of my like really good guy friends and stuff like that. Like they've helped me a lot. But like I wanted to be able to just deal with it on my own. If they're not there, I don't want to have to like be the guy who like calls and be like, hey, 有人过来了，我听不懂他在说什么，赶紧过来. And like that's like a really common thing with a lot of foreigners who start businesses here. Yeah. So when it was that, it was just like I was writing a WeChat public account. Yeah. So for me, just writing those articles, that was learning. It was writing and learning, writing and learning, writing and learning. So it's combining what I like to do with my work, and I think I'm really lucky to be able to do that.
Great, great. My final question, let me see, is actually from my audience. They've asked me to kindly ask you to critique my English. I'm a little nervous. I know my English is not perfect, but I still welcome critique anytime.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like, how long have you been in the States? Like,
on and off for about 5 years. I went to Seattle in 2012. So roughly around the same time you went to Beijing.
Oh shit!
But I had studied English prior to that. I was in school for 3 years back in middle school, like, but it didn't get me anywhere. I couldn't understand a foreigner. I couldn't watch TV or anything. It was just basic textbook English. You know? Yeah. After middle school, I spent a year like really studying everything. I watched Friends for maybe 10 times. I would go over the subtitles like it's a textbook. So I did that for a year, and then I went to Seattle in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm shocked, to be honest. Like I'm not trying to flatter you. Like, your English is phenomenal. Like if I wanted to be really nitpicky, I mean, it sounds like it could even just be like a regional accent, but say a couple like final S sounds that we would pronounce as a Z. So like years, you often pronounce them as kind of in between a Z and a S sound. So you didn't like actually, use your vocal cords there. And then just now you said 4, 5 times or something like that. Whereas when we're talking about, 时长, a length of time, for 5 years, that's when we use for. But if you're talking about how many times you've done something, we wouldn't add the preposition for. So just I've done this 5 times. But I mean, no, like I would have just guessed that you're an ABC.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like,
yeah. I feel like because I've been talking to my students in Chinese a lot, and I've just been using English more than learning. I was pretty active before I had anything going on in my life. Like I would have nothing else better to do, and I would just watch TV, I would read, I would listen to podcasts. But now, because I'm teaching online as well, and sometimes I wonder, like, am I adequate enough to teach English? Like I should have been perfecting it more before I started teaching. But yeah, thanks for the input.
No, I mean, out of all the people that come to mind that are, Chinese people that are teaching English online, I'm having trouble thinking of anyone else that speaks better than you.
Oh my God, that's a huge compliment. Oh my God.
Like there are people that have like much heavier accents, like American accents or British accents. But I think as a result, they occasionally sound a little bit stilted, like a little bit, a little forced, because they're just forcing themselves to talk like that. It's like when an American does a British accent, it sounds a little bit weird because they're Whereas I don't really get that. I mean, like you're just talking, you're just being you. You sound incredibly relaxed, and I mean, you might stop and think about some stuff, but that's what any native speaker would do too. So besides what I just mentioned, like the S, pronouncing it as an S instead of a Z, or saying 4 or 5 times, like
great.
No, I mean,
thanks.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I know where I should go from now. Okay, so final thing before we wrap up.
Sure.
What's your biggest, I would say, what's the most important factor in achieving fluency? For you, at least. What's the most important thing that you need to have?
Don't be scared of making mistakes. Just
elaborate.
Do it all the time. I mean, like, I would go out and talk to people all the time, anywhere, anytime. I didn't really care who it was. I would talk to the like baoan right outside of my apartment complex. I would talk to the waiters at restaurants and just chat with them. If I went and got a massage, like actually when I first got to Beijing, my business partner Danny and I, we would just go and get massages, foot massages. And he was actually better at Chinese than I was at the time because he got here a month before I did. And we would just talk to the masseuses, like finding these little situations. I mean, this person stuck with you for an hour, right? So it was just like, all right, we're going to talk to them. We're going to chat with them. And I mean, like I said, Chinese people are super friendly with that. So it was easier than it might be for a Chinese person in the US, but you can't be scared of making mistakes. Like you just can't. Because nobody really cares, if you say something wrong. One, they might correct you, they might not. If they don't understand you, they'll ask you to repeat it. And 3 hours later when they're off with their friends, like they're not going to be thinking about like, oh my God, did you hear what Ella said? Like that was ridiculous. Like nobody cares. So you need 脸皮厚一点. Like that is incredibly important. Like if you don't have that, it's going to be really, really hard to get to a really high level of spoken English at least. And I mean, it just takes time. The other thing is just do it as much as you can tolerate. Like I don't want to tell somebody to study for 3 hours a day every day because I won't do that. Like I love learning languages and I won't do that. Like study as much as you can tolerate on that day and make sure that you're consistent. If you do it every day, even if it's 15 minutes today, 35 tomorrow, 3 hours the next day, and then 10 minutes the day after that, you'll get better. Like that's what you have to do.
Yeah. True. Okay, so where can people find you if they want to learn English with you?
So 口语老炮儿马思瑞，哔哩哔哩、微博、抖音、微信公众号 everything.
Okay.
And I have a spoken
Do you have a
English
physical
course
location?
on Himalaya. No. Well, we do where we work, but everything that we do now is online. So we have a Himalaya course, which is Chris 的英语之道.
Okay, I'll link that up
right,
in my
cool.
description. Alrighty, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
No, it was great.
All right.
Anytime.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
See you. Bye.